Could I ask you a question, and maybe it'll occur to you when you're doing the caress?
Yeah.
Um, is there any coordination with the inhale and exhale of the breath? Are
No,
you none at
no,
all?
no, no,
Okay.
no, no, no. You're feeding your diaphragm. You don't
Yeah.
want to tell your diaphragm what to do. Your diaphragm knows what it wants to do.
Okay.
It can say,
How,
"Why don't you
how,
do this?"
how, how are you? It's the sense. It's creating the sensation that feeds the diaphragm.
It's creating more blood supply into the diaphragm.
That's all.
So it's creating more blood supply into the diaphragm, and it's growing the blood vessels because
Wow.
the compression and decompression, which is what happens before birth and what happens as we move and as we breathe, is creating this gentle compression and decompression of the blood vessels. And this creates what's called a vasomotion, where blood spins to the blood vessel. And that helps to grow the blood vessel to grow and branch and feed the cells. And also, of course, so the nerve cells develop, the nerves also feeding the nerves the oxygen that they need. And remember, it's switching on genetic material. So every little cell knows really what which is making up the tissue, what organ it's going to be. So, but until it's got some food to give it the sense, oh well, now you want me now, I can join up. So then they will nicely join up, unless of course something horrible has happened to them and they've been getting all this acid stuff, in which case they say, oh, I can't do that, I have to go it alone, in which case they become a cancer cell. Because it's changed the encrypted information.
And we do know that cancer is an oxygen deficiency disease. I mean, that seems to be
I thought, no, the happy cell. Unfortunate for you that you had one, but it wasn't its fault that it had all this acid waste product or to cope with. So now it doesn't need the oxygen, the mitochondria, because it isn't living on oxygen, and within that is also encrypted its lifespan. So now its lifespan is no longer short; it can live forever.
wow. So by depriving it of oxygen, you kind of back it into a corner,
Yes,
and it goes, okay, if I'm not going to have oxygen, I'm going to survive one way or the other, and it
yes,
has a genetic flip.
yes, and then it might feel, oh well, yes, I can grow, I can double myself, and we can have a holiday everywhere else, but we can't join any organs because we no longer are cells that belong to any organs.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So
Yep.
so again, when I look at the people who come to me with cancer, a percentage of whom also do the diaphragm, well, they arrive to do a hyperbaric oxygen.
They come for the technology, and they stay for the wisdom.
And you can see the weakness here
You can
because
see it.
this is that immune system. The immune system has been so battered. But when you go back in time, you can follow where a situation occurred that made that specific organ vulnerable as opposed to another organ. And of course, if you go further back, you would also see the likelihood what was that the initial vulnerability happened before you were born. And then, of course, circumstances. That's why it's so interesting once and why to have a whole school of thought emerging with this would be so superb and would change the paradigm of our health and free us from this awful situation that we are apparently trapped in, where the drugs that they're giving people over and over again are just making the situation worse and worse and worse, and reducing really their joy in life, which I mentioned before.
Sure.
And the whole recognition of this common humanity in this world, so you're taking in, like you take in air.
And creating a toxicity, and that
Yes,
the body then has to deal with that.
yes.
So just to go back to this point, and because sometimes things are so simple, things are the hardest things to grasp.
I think so.
So this it's barely any weight at all.
Mm.
This creates a pressure And how does the pressure translate into the more fluid for the, maybe this is so obvious, but so you give it pressure for how many seconds, a certain amount of time?
So I do a count of 6 down, a count of 6 up, and a pause of 3. But I use other little pulses. I use a sort of little heartbeat pulses as well, and little movements to try to open out the blood vessels, all of which are really taken for observations of both early development and in terms of the movement of the diaphragm against the lungs, and then later development in the way in which our respiratory system adapts and also works with the heart.
So to do this well, or at a very high level, obviously your perceptual ability, the greater your perceptual ability, the more effective this is going to be. Would you say that's a fair?
Well, yes, although some parents are not that super good at it, and they still get nice results.
It still works.
I tell them,
Yeah.
I'm, and also, I said, look, I'm going to show you the optimal way of doing this. But when we start to work on your child who's moving around and not in any way allowing you to do this in the stereotypical way in which you've been taught. But the reason for teaching this is to give you the confidence that then you can adapt it, that you know at the end of the line, the pressure is what you like. It's not delivered in such a perfect way. You may be in a different position entirely, using your elbow to do it or whatever. And we start by using a soft, fluffy flannel, and then you don't have to use the flannel after that. That helps to cushion the movement. But if you're using your hands, it's really nice. But some of the children are very bony, so it would be more difficult to get that softness without a towel. So it depends which fit you're using. And the children with novel limbic situation, they tend to be too interested in a towel. They want to pull it off. But with your hands, they're all right. And because it begins to feel nice and calming, and just a huge relief sort of flows off you, they like it. And that is what is so nice. But it does feel very nice. It's great.
And again, it's 6 seconds of a little gentle pressure, then 3 seconds, or what?
Down, 6 up, and a pause of 3. And you're doing it. The way to do it is to use your shoulder, your shoulder, or your shoulder blade. So if you're doing it on someone else, so your hand remains soft. You don't prod.
Okay.
No prodding or push. Your hand's a soft piece of cloth. So
okay, literally, it's just there's nothing going on in the hand at all.
No. It's
Okay.
you just make sure you're not putting your whole weight down. You're just lowering that piece of cloth gently.
And where does that 3 seconds occur? Does that occur? So you're down for 6, and then you release for 6, and then you
wait for the 3 seconds so everything can open out. So there's little blood vessels, the cells, everything that's been slightly stretched can now open out again.
And then down it goes, but with nothing in the hand.
No.
And yeah.
So I have a question, because I'm very interested. The question is, are you just working one specific area? Are you working in
We work all the way around the diaphragm.
Yeah, okay. Because the other question is about cueing. I understand that you're following totally, but do you believe that there's a innate cueing or awakening that happens? Because I'm not saying I've done your work. I've done some work where I lay hands on parts of the diaphragm that are not moving. There'll be some areas that are more stagnant than others, and you just kind of wait. I'm not doing any pumping, but it kind of wakes up and they start to breathe into these areas. So I'm curious about how much is in your words, is some sort of I don't know, sympathetic resonance, a chi thing, or is it just the pumping and you're pushing the blood?
It's so far as I interpret it,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm doing is copying both those movements, those prenatal movements, and then the little movements that the baby makes, which are also because we do it with two hands, alternate with the twist here, twist there,
Mm-hmm.
forwards. So I'm copying nature as much as I know, and every time I came to a little sort of impasse and wanted to know more, I just went back to nature and looked more deeply into what was happening.
Okay.
So that's how I keep it. What else is happening? Because when I started, I didn't know about fascia, and I didn't know the diaphragm was made of fascia. I didn't know any of these things. Just seemed to me all the time that there had to be something else going on to create this really this intelligence that the organ had. So each time, so when I learned into and then I could think, oh, so this would be underlying the result that is seen. But it's the what is waking up all these cells from this little egg-shaped baby. They don't have a little script. Oh no, so we're now 4 days old. Where are we up to? It cannot be like that. There has to be this life force within, this intelligence within the body. The brain couldn't do it. It couldn't take on all that much information. It would be impossible for it. So the brain is looking at other things, but ideally they should know one another and work nicely together. But our culture gets hold of the brain and says, oh, we can manipulate this. And then the brain is less sensitive and aware of what the poor diaphragm is trying to do in all its beauty and wisdom. So it picks up the pieces all the time for us.
Right.
And this is what longevity is really about. Unless you're doing, I mean, look at our queen. She's all bent over. She may be 90, she's all bent over. So whatever she's taken, she hasn't looked at her diaphragm.
Right.
And it is, and you point out that it is the degeneration of the diaphragm that causes that collapse. And it actually, you solved a mystery I have. My hips are always tight, and I've always wondered about that. And now I realize, you pointed out, Linda, that it's the diaphragm that in the baby opens the hips.
Yes.
If the diaphragm develops correctly, the hips will all naturally go out, and you'll have nice
It
broad.
pushes down. All the internal organs are working up and down, up and down.